Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paula Barbeito from Slow Food, and I want to welcome you all to this Terra Madre event. Today, we are here to celebrate the launching of a new project, Foodnected, a project which aims to connect people and nature around local, fair, and sustainable food systems. But before jumping into this new project and hearing from the excellent audience of speakers who will share their experiences and knowledge, I would like to give our public some practical information. For this webinar, your video camera and microphones will be muted, but we encourage you to write your questions in the chat and we will discuss them at the end. Having these considerations in mind, I think we are now ready to start. Foodnected is a project led by Slow Food. Foodnected is a project led by Slow Food in partnership with Low Impact Fishers of Europe, Global Footprint Network, and GOB Menorca, and it's financed by the MAVA Foundation. As I anticipated in the very beginning, Foodnected wants to connect people and nature around fair and sustainable food systems. Or in other words, this project aims to accelerate the transition to sustainable food systems. Before explaining how we plan to achieve this goal, we would like to explore the context in which this idea of the project emerges. I would like now to introduce you to Alessandro Galli, Director of Global Footprint Network in the Mediterranean. Alessandro is macroecologist and sustainability scientist, and he is also a passionate in anthropology and human behavior. Good afternoon, Alessandro.
Good afternoon, Paula, and thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Alessandro, Global Footprint Network is an organization that is changing how the world manages its natural resources and responds to climate change. I would like you to explain our audience what is happening with the current way of feeding ourselves and why we need to accelerate the transition to sustainable food systems.
Okay, yes. So as you said, Global Footprint Network is an NGO, and we are trying to provide tools to help people measure and understand the impact of their way of living has on the planet. So I'm going to touch very briefly on what are the situation that we see and what is happening these days. I mean, with the food systems across the world. To do this, I will start I will make one step back. Over the past months and last year, we have seen the publication of several reports from UN agencies, NGOs, independent reviews, and so on. All these reports, to some extent, have an underlying message that I will personally phrase with the 3 points that I put down here. And they are that the human economies are overusing the planet resources, and this is causing biodiversity to decline. The decline in biodiversity is putting at risk the well-being of the current and future generations, and also the stability of the planet. And this destabilization of the planet, of the Earth system, it also in turn affects back what are the foundations of our health as individuals, and also the functioning of our economies. Now, one way to visualize all of these change is through this picture that we love to show. Which summarize how we say the rules of the game are changed, because it's kind of trying to measure here with these two circles and the two squared, the size of the biosphere and the size of the economy. No? And many are indicating, and many studies now are indicating, that we have seen over the past decades a transition from an empty world, a world that was full of natural capital and in which the limiting factor was man-made capital and people, to a full world, the Anthropocene, in which the natural capital has started to emerge as a limiting factor. Now, at Global Footprint Network, what we are trying to do is providing an actual measure of these circles and these boxes that we see, to not just express, let's say, a qualitative indication of the overuse of the planet, but to provide an indication, a quantitative measurement of these. And what we have seen through our accounting is that over the past 5 decades, humanity's ecological footprint, which is this red line that we see here, which is basically our overall aggregate demand for resources and ecosystem services, has surpassed what the Earth is able to provide, so the Earth biocapacity, to the extent that we now demand about the equivalent of 1.6 Earths to produce the resources and the services that humans consume in a year. Now, of course, we all know that we don't have this extra 0.6 planet. No? We only have the one planet in which we are. And what this means, it means simply that the planet, our planet, needs about 19 months to regenerate the resources that we as humans consume in 12 months. And this, considering all the resources and the biocapacity of the planet made available just for us. But we know that in order to maintain at least 85% of global biodiversity, we should use only about half of the planet. Now, why I am saying all of these and how is this related to the food system? This is related to the food system because about 50% of this biocapacity, of this ecological budget that the planet is putting available for humans is demanded, is used to feed us. Now, you may think that 50% is not that much, but it is just for food. On top of these, we have housing, transportation, goods and services, and so on. So half of the planet resources are basically used just to feed us. So, of course, this is indicative of problems all around our food system and in each single steps of the food system. So I would like just to briefly mention some of these problems, starting from the production side. So first of all, we have seen that over the past decades, our production practices have become more industrialized and more intensive. So we are placing more and more pressure on the environment, on the ecosystems, just to produce the resources. But the way in which, let's say, we move the resources around is also unsustainable, because we rely globally on very long supply chains. First of all, we should know that about 80% of the food that is produced in cities is, that is produced worldwide, is consumed in cities. So this already gives us an idea of how far we need to move the food that we consume. A recent study, which I reported here, has found that only about 30% of the world population satisfy its needs for crop-based food from within 100 kilometers of distance. But in many cases here, you see countries are relying on food that comes 1,000, 2,000, or up to 5,000 kilometers away from there. So we have over time increased the disconnection between producers and consumers, and this, we will see later on, is a fundamental aspect that Food Connected aims to address. We also waste a lot of food, and this is like one of an incredible dysfunctionality that we see, where the food that is produced but ends up being wasted and never eaten occupies about 1/3 of the agricultural land that is available on the planet. And it also amounts to about 950 billion US dollars. Finally, the last point is that the way in which we eat is also characterized by dysfunctionalities and is highly unbalanced. We have seen over time in most of the society, especially in the Western world, an increase in ultra-processed food, pre-cooked and ready-to-eat meals, sugar-rich foods, and also protein-based ingredients. And one of the, if you want, peak indication of these unbalances is the fact that while we have 11% of the world population malnourished, we also have about 2 billion people that are suffering from obesity. So we have seen that in all the different phases and steps of the food chain, there are major drivers of unsustainability. So what I want to conclude and give you back the floor by saying that the way in which we eat, in my view, is an ultimate indication of the sustainability of our entire food systems. As consumers, now I speak, for instance, as myself, or in general as consumers, we have a fundamental and a very powerful tool, in my view, which is the fork, is the way through which we can actually make decisions. Because in the end, eating is an act of responsibility, a political act, and also an act of activism. And through our dietary decisions, we can make a lot of impacts and a cascade of impacts throughout the entire food chain. So this is the starting point from which, we have resonated to set up the Food Connected project. And I give the floor back to you to go ahead with the event. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Alessandro, for this excellent overview. Alessandro has shared with us the general trend that is happening globally with our food system and the consequences for our environment. I would like now to have a regional approach and explore what is happening in the Mediterranean basin. And for that, I would like to introduce you to Julien Semelin. Julien works for the MAVA Foundation, which finances the project Food Connected. He is the program coordinator in the Mediterranean. Good afternoon, Julien.
Hey, good afternoon, Paula. Good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much. I think you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yes. So thank you very much for inviting me and giving me the floor for some minutes to respond to your question about the Mediterranean, and also say a few words about our foundation and why we were interested to support that initiative. So after the introduction of Ale, I would say that in the Med, we we see trends that are not very specific only to the Med, but it's a worldwide, that's worldwide trends, but maybe the Mediterranean has some specificities. It's you all know that it's a closed sea with a lot of people living around the sea, and what we see because of that food system that we have is the Med is one of the most overfished seas in the world. So there is a high overfishing rate in the Mediterranean, and this is in the sea, but also on land. We also see that land conversion for agriculture is also something we see in the Med, like everywhere. But there are also impact on the way we use our natural resources, and water, I think, around the Med is one of the main issues. So the way we use water for agriculture is a concern in the Mediterranean. So I think the Med has a lot of challenges, but that's challenges that are faced all around the world. And one of the challenges that is also important is the huge impact those food systems have on biodiversity and on nature. And this is why our foundation was interested by that project. I can say a few words about the MAVA Foundation, because it's a foundation which started in 1994. But our history started way earlier, because we are funded by the Hoffman family, and Luc Hoffman was the founder of the foundation. And Luc was a passionate nature conservationist. He was an ornithologist, and back in the 50s or in the 60s, he started to study and protect birds from Switzerland to south of France and the Mediterranean. And I remember when you hear some stories about Luc in the 60s, when he arrived in Camargue, the south of France in the Mediterranean. That's a big area of wetlands, and in the 60s they were also converted for agriculture. And the very first fight of the family was to try to protect those wetlands for the benefit of species and biodiversity, but also for the benefit of people living in those areas. The same happened also in the south of Spain, in the Doñana, because also there was at that time threatened by also agriculture, and there was one of the first project supported by the family. It was also to protect those areas. So we are talking about challenges that started in the 60s, so 50 years ago, when Europe started to change the way they produce food. So, and it has a huge impact on biodiversity at that time. So that's a long run, that's a long-term challenge, but it's also, so just to say that it's an investment from the family for a long time ago. So it's about protecting species, biodiversity, habitats, but it's also to try to connect with people living on those areas. So you mentioned that this project is about connecting people and nature. So it's exactly one of the objectives of the foundation, is try to protect biodiversity for the benefit of nature and people. So now the foundation has entered its last funding cycle. We are closing in 2022, and it's this project is part of the last portfolio of projects that we have been supporting. And if you look at the portfolio project that we have now, most of the projects are here to try to, let's say, mitigate the impact of some activities on nature. So the way we fish, for instance, we can improve the way we are fishing to try to avoid catching some marine vulnerable species. That's some of the projects we are supporting on that direction. But other projects are also trying to promote best practices that are a good impact on biodiversity and natural resources. So, and we see it in the Mediterranean that there are a lot of traditional activities that are also benefiting nature, like transhumance or pastoralism or small-scale fishers. So we know that there are, let's say, those activities have a good impact on sustainability of our resources and on biodiversity as well. So this project is exactly aligned with this, and we are very proud to support this set of partners. That's one of the levers we try to activate, the fork that Ale was mentioning. That's one way of changing the rule of the game. So, and we are really happy to support the partners that will be presented today, and the project that will be launched today. So thank you very much, Paula, for giving me the floor, and I give it back to you.
Thank you very much, Julien. Well, I think that with these two contributions from Julien and from Alessandro, we have now a great picture of the situation we are facing with the way we eat food and we produce food and the consequences on biodiversity. But in addition to that, I would like to add something else that might help better contextualize the need for a project like FoodNected. During the conversation today, we have heard several times the notion of food system. And as a definition, system implies a set of things that interact with each other and form the unity, the unified whole. Despite that we are familiarized with the systems view and with the systemics approach, to put this into practice is not that easy, and neither is very common. For example, when considering policy and management, there might be policies that benefit a sector of the food system, for example, let's say farmers, but these policies can have important environmental consequences for bees or coastal waters, affecting then beekeepers and fishing communities. This situation creates conflicts among the different food producers. And then we realize that cohesion is a goal rarely encountered. It is an element that is always implicit in policies, but is rarely explicit. And what happens if a system is not cohesive? That sooner or later it will be broken. And this is what we are seeing right now. And on the other hand, we have also heard today about sustainability and fairness in the value chain. Well, from the slow food perspective and experience that we have in working with small-scale producers and consumers, we have realized that sustainability is very often a narrative built from international institutions, NGOs, governments, and the definition of sustainability is very often environmentally driven. And if we consider what Alessandro and Julien shared with us today, there is an urgent need to incorporate social and economic aspects into what sustainability is. And these aspects must depart from the vision and the language of who produce food and who eat that food. In keeping these aspects in mind, Slow Food together with Low Impact Fishers of Europe, with GOB Menorca and with Global Footprint Network, we have came with two crucial questions. How can we make those who eat food active builders of sustainable and fair food systems? And how can we simplify the way to do it? And the other question, how can small-scale producers become stewards of the sustainability and fairness processes? And as an answer to these questions, we have decided to create the FoodNected. FoodNected as a project aims to become a large community of practice comprising smaller communities and networks that are already working towards more sustainable and fair value chains. We will build this community of communities of practice around three main components. First, we would like to build a broadly shared approach to sustainable food production and consumption in the European Union. We would like to identify a set of core values that integrate the views of the communities and networks that are already working in sustainable and fair value chains. In the second component, we would like to design workable pathways that will allow to implement these core values, and we will test these pathways in specific pilot sites. These are the Balearic Islands and Sicily. And finally, we would like to capitalize on learning and advocacy at regional and wider levels. We are now in the very initial phase of the project, so we are mapping initiatives that might be interested in building this shared approach. So we don't really have results yet to share with you, but I would like to introduce you to the other partners who will share with us the benefits they see from this community of practice. I would like now to give the floor to Marta Cavalle, who is the Mediterranean and Black Sea coordinator of the platform Low Impact Fishers of Europe, an organization run by fishers for fishers. Good afternoon, Marta. No, you are...
Hello?
Okay,
no. Thank you, Paula. Thanks a lot.
Marta, I would like to share with the public the work that your organization, LIFE, is doing, and how, from your experience, do you think that small-scale fishers can benefit from a community of practice of this kind, and even more, where do they see an added value to be engaged in such a community of practice?
Okay, thanks a lot. Let me see if I can share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
No, okay. Wait. Okay.
Yes, here we are.
Okay. Do you see my screen, right? Right. Okay, so yes, so we were saying that about small-scale fishers and so on. So, but maybe we have to say who are the small-scale fishers in that respect, right? So I'm trying to see here a bit of a slide of what we consider a bit who are what are the small-scale fishers, because somehow we don't have a universal definition, and it's going to be very hard to have one. But somehow I think a lot of people can already identify what are the small scale. So small scale are small scale vessels, so up to 12, for example, in the European Union, that they fish in a polyvalent way. So that means that they fish accordingly to a specific season, a specific target species, a specific given bottom line. So what is important also to say is that they are low in productivity. That means that even though they represent like the 80% of the vessels in the Mediterranean, they have a very small percentage of the catches. That means around 10 or 15% of the catches. So that indicates a bit on the whole weight of the catches of at the Mediterranean level, but also broadly rely on the industrial fisheries. Small scale are also normally very local, so they don't tend to go very far, and normally the captain of the boat is also the owner of the boat, and normally it's involving fishing family business kind of way. Having a bit identified who are the small scale, we can also say that they are produce a great value in the whole fishery sector. They are socially well integrated, homegrown source of employment. They are local food provision with a diversity of catch. They kind of catch a different species during their seasons, and they are largely selective and seasonal harvest. So basically we can say that they are offering high quality products, and they have the potential to be produced in a sustainable way and with a greater balance among the social, economic and environmental criteria. However, despite all these values, they somehow are they have been marginalized a bit for the fisheries value chains, which, as you see here, I'm not trying to explain this complex matrix, but just to show you that the fisheries value chains nowadays are very complex, kind of trying to be opaque, so they are not transparent, and you can say that the small-scale fisheries cannot really value a bit their products. So having said that, we can say that they struggle making visible their value added. So all the products that come from abroad, very far away, illegal fishing, industrial fishing, aquaculture products, they are all sell and then in the market, and we cannot really identify those products from the small scale. Also, the lack of organization of the small scale also have kind of sets a big difficulties when they access to the markets. They struggle to set fair prices. Even the recent study said that, for example, the final producer, which is the fisher in this case, only receives kind of the 10% of the final price. And normally we face a market where there's a dominance of few valued species. We kind of tend to eat the same species all over and over. No, that's the salmon, hake, and free water. So all this is affecting a bit the system. So all these issues kind of also make that there's an instability, uncertainty of prices to the fishers at small scale. And that tends to lead into a vicious circle that somehow also, even for a small scale, in some places they tend to compensate this lack of price or lack of certainty to intensifying the fishing effort, and even sometimes also sell outside the legal frameworks. Obviously, those are behaviors that there have to be changed, and they actually aggravate the overexploitation of the marine resources and fragility of livelihoods, and finally risking to the disappearance of the small scale. So this vicious circle, right? This is what we try to break here. And the happy news is that somehow there's already initiatives all over the Mediterranean that are trying to tackle this issue and try to change a bit the game. Some of those you may already know, some of those have been supported by LIFE at the same time. And what are those initiatives or how they do it? Basically, they promote the self-organization and leadership of the small scale, so they can move from price makers to price takers to price makers, so they can actually have an active role on the sale of their fish and the negotiation and and they set the business, so they collectively are able to negotiate better their prices and so on. Also by shortening the value chain, right? So that's basically a key issue here, where we try to eat more local and we try to connect the producers and the consumers together. And sometimes those initiatives also have provided innovation in the distribution channel. That means the online, for example, way to sell their fish, or through apps, or the community-supported fisheries systems, which is kind of the key also component for this project, fish baskets, etc. Also, of course, other initiatives that promote an small-scale fisheries production system and in the undervalued species that they come along. So that the idea is to not to eat what the markets provide, offer us, but eat what the sea can offer us in a sustainable way. That means diversify a bit our species chosen, right? And those promotions that I was talking about, that some of the organizations of small scale have produced, they also involved the labeling creation or the creation of fairs and festivals to promote locally. So that was your question, Paula, right? So I arrive at the end, but what is the community of practice can provide to those fishers, small scale fishers? Well, basically, we see that the community of practice will allow to connect and cooperate, promote cooperation at local level. So actually those consumers that are willing to consume better and those fishers that are willing to explain better their products are able to be connected through the systems that are somehow in place also in some parts of the local level. And basically also what we think is that being able to set these holistic and shared values and vision of the sustainable and fair food systems will allow us also to identify on those products, visualize on those products how those initiatives contribute to those values. No, we want to see, for example, how they contribute to the environment, or to the environment, but also maybe we want to also see how they contribute to on the role of women or on the younger generations. So this holistic vision will allow us to, or in the fairness, no, we will be able to valorize better those products in a more realistic way. And of course, the community of practice will be able to share and learn experiences from practice on common challenges, and why not advocacy for the sustainable and fair food systems. So all in all, we will change the idea of a vicious circle that we are immersed to a virtuous circle, right? So that we will allow transition to and accelerate a better sustainable and fair food system. So that, thank you very much. And I just leave you with this picture of some of our members to picture a bit these young generations to coming in and be able to produce better, but also eat better.
Thank you very much, Marta, for this great overview. I would like to ask the same question to our next partner, no? Because somehow we are doing this overview about what is happening with our environment, our food system, the Mediterranean context. Then we have the vision of the fisherman perspective. But I would like now to introduce you to Jara Febrer. Good afternoon, Jara.
Hi, good afternoon.
Jara works at the GOB Menorca in the Custodia Agraria program, which seeks to promote sustainable agriculture based on land stewardship agreements between this NGO, GOB Menorca, and farmers. Jara, I would like to ask you the same question that I asked to Marta. Taking into account all the work that GOB Menorca has been doing with local farmers and the experience that you have accumulated during all this time, how do you think small-scale farmers can benefit from a community of practice of this kind? And also, where do they see an added value to be engaged in such a community of practice?
Well, to answer this question, I will use this presentation that I have prepared. Can you see it now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, like this. Okay, yeah. So as you were saying, I will speak on behalf of the Custodia Agraria program, which is a very local program because we work here in Menorca, and our objective is to promote sustainable agriculture and to support sustainable farmers. And first of all, what I wanted to mention is going back to what Julian was saying, is the role of the landscape on all the biodiversity levels, and the fact that the Mediterranean area has been a highly humanized area for millennia, and the impact of humans on the landscape has changed it in a way that also biodiversity, so all wild species have been adapting to this landscape. So it's not only this view that sometimes we think, oh, agriculture is a polluting activity, it's only an activity with a high negative impact. It also can have a positive impact. And this is what we are trying to show and to foster in our program. The problem is that, here. The problem is that current agriculture for the last decade have been facing a big crisis where it was very difficult to stay on this sustainable point where agriculture can be a means of fostering biodiversity. And this crisis has led farmers to go in two different directions, either in the direction of abandoning their activity, and this can lead to land homogenization, because in the moment they abandon the land, then also forests come back, but this means less diversity on the landscape. And then, besides other problems that I won't go deep now on them, biodiversity associated to this mosaic landscape will be lost. In the other direction, we have the intensification of the farming activities, and this is the kind of agriculture that brings all these problems with a very high ecological footprint. And this intensive farming often just wants big areas for monoculture. They use pesticides, they use irrigation, they use nitrates, so fertilizers, and they bring nitrate pollution to water, which in the Mediterranean area is a big problem. And this also leads to loss of biodiversity. So there's a point in the middle where this landscape, this mosaic landscape is kept, is maintained, soil fertility is kind of cared for, water resources are also well managed, and there's a fostering of all this biodiversity associated. And what the good news, or what we want to bring, is that this balance does exist. There's a balance between profitability in the agricultural activities, which is necessary, because if the activity is not profitable, farmers won't be able to live from it. And also where environmental values are kept, are cared for. And I just put our logo in the middle, this Custodia Agraria logo, because this is what we have found here in Menorca, and this is the kind of agriculture that we are promoting. We think that the first mistake for small-scale farmers is when they are trying to compete for price. What I mean is that in this globalized world, there will be always someone who can sell cheaper. And if they are trying to compete through low prices, they won't succeed, or they will succeed in a very costly ways for them. So we think there are three main key points for small-scale agriculture, for small-scale farmers, which would be the first, to lower their production costs. This means reduce their dependence on external inputs, reduce their use of pesticides, of fertilizers, of fungicides. Then this is all extra profit they will have, because they won't be using this as a cost. The second point is to shorten their supply chains, because we have seen that when there's a very short distance between the producer and the consumer, it will arise a special personal bond between them, which will lead to loyalty between the client and the producer, and there will be higher returns due to the reduction of the intermediaries, of all the costs associated to distribution. And the third key point for us is that they should focus on the added value of their products. We have identified three main values, and they are also what we have in our logo, which is health, nature, and proximity. Their products should be associated to the value of health. That means they won't be using toxics as fertilizers or pesticides or all these agrochemical products, that they will reduce their use. Then also the second value would be nature, and this picture that I have here in the middle is to show what we don't want. This is all this plastified agriculture, so to say, and we are trying to convey to the public the value of the products from these farmers that keep natural values, and then also proximity. So it's kind of agriculture that, as I was saying before, it's sold in short supply chains. So it's an added value that it won't be polluting on all the transportation, and it's just a value to know that the food you are eating is grown just a few kilometers from your home. So this is our logo, and this is under it, Salud, Natura, Proximidad. They're the three added values that we have identified as the main values to sell these products. And here I just wanted to explain a bit what the Custodia Agraria program is. It's based on an agreement between the farmer and GOB. GOB is our NGO, is a non-profit environmental NGO. And we are agreeing on some types of management measures in their agriculture management that have benefits for the environment and benefits for the economy of these farmers. And it's based on trust. There's no economic exchange. They don't pay to be part of the program. And what they gain from being in this program is a set of helps that we can offer them. We bring volunteers to the farms. We organize monthly volunteering activities where we help them to, for example, manage forest areas. So to create shadow areas for cattle. For example, we do many different works. We organize training for all these farmers. We promote their products. This is very appreciated by them. We also lobby at the local or regional level to so the policies that are developed here do also kind of give advantages to this kind of agriculture management. We also apply jointly for grants for all the to be able to do projects in the farms associated to the program. We do environmental education for local students in the farms, and we raise awareness to the big public. So related to the question that you were asking me, Paula, I think farmers can benefit from a COP, from a community of practice, a bit as they are benefiting from our program. More, this is very at a local level, all this volunteering and maybe the environmental education, all this is very local, but from a bigger COP, they can always get training, they can get inspiration from other farmers or other communities that have gathered experience and have learned something that can help them. They can also benefit from lobbying. They can benefit from this increased social awareness and a way to, they would be in a better position to convey the added value of their products. And at the end, what they always need is to be able to sell their products at a fair price, fair for them and also for the clients. So I think the main benefit of being in such a COP is to simply be in a better position to, in the end, sell in this sustainable and fair way.
Thank you very much, Cara. It is very, very nice and very inspiring to see what the realities, what the existing alternatives are taking place right now, and that might benefit from this community of communities of practice that will be food netted. Actually, nowadays, I think that one of the learnings that the COVID pandemic has fostered is that the number of direct marketing initiatives to promote short value chains is increasing. And we see that in both seafood and sustainable agriculture. And I would like now to give the floor to Thibault José, who is behind the French Association Plein Mer. Plein Mer is not one of the partners, but since we are in this first phase where we are mapping initiatives that might be benefit of this bigger community of practice, we have seen all the work that Plein Mer is doing, I think mainly in the Atlantic coast of France, and we would like Thibault to explain us what is a community-supported fisheries, and also how these schemes of community-supported fisheries and community-supported aquaculture can benefit both the small-scale producers and consumers in this framework of fair and sustainable food systems. So the floor is yours, Thibault.
Thank you so much. I hope you guys can hear me. I'm sorry, I'm on the field right now with the fishers, so there might be a little bit of noise around, but I hope everyone is hearing. So yeah, Planmer is an organization of fishers and consumers involved together for basically a sustainable transition. And we decided to work mostly around community-supported fisheries issues. And my work was so the organization has 2 years, and my work was to make a mapping of every community-supported fisheries on the French coast, which includes, for example, fishers selling their fish directly on the, like close to the boat, but also fish markets, or even some, I don't know if you know about it, but some CSA called AMAP that include small-scale fishers. But obviously it's only community supported fisheries, so they are driven by fishers. So yeah, I see that the link is now in the chat if you want to check out this map, which is basically now for now covering the whole French coast, so on the Mediterranean coast and on the Atlantic coast. So for us, I'm going to try to make it simple, but a CSF would be basically a contract between the consumer and the fisher, and the consumer is committed to consume fish directly from the fisher, so to buy it directly from the fishers, which is basically giving a fair price for the work of the small-scale fisher. And on the other side of the contract, you have the small-scale fisher who is committed to improve the sustainability of its fishing, who is committed to, who will also, without this contract, but if the fisher is paid better, gets a better price for every catch, he's gonna need to go way less at sea, which is directly gonna decrease overfishing issues. For example, here I'm in the Basque Country, and I have a friend in Bayonne. He was not doing direct selling before, he's a fisher. And now that he's doing direct selling for a few years, he saw that basically it's decreasing his fishing effort for a rate of like 30%, which is a lot when you think about it. Because for only one fisher, it would not really impact the whole ecosystem. But when you think about harbors like Cap Breton, where you have 20 boats selling their fish on the deck, you can be sure that this is directly improving the quality of the ecosystem, the quality of the fish that people eat, because it's like directly from the deck to the consumer. And also I would say the social relationship in the coastal environment, because it's like a rebuilding coastal communities that have disappeared due to lots of causes like neoliberal politics. So basically everyone benefits from the community supported fisheries, but sometimes they don't have that much visibility, which is why we have been trying to map them. So I was basically living in my car and going from harbor to harbor around the coast in order to discuss with the fishers when they were selling their fish directly and understand why they would be doing it, what kind of species they were selling, what kind of gears they were using, the size of the boat, the name of the boat, take a few pictures, sometimes get at sea with them, so that the map is as complete as possible in order to inform people of where to buy fish directly from the fisher. And this makes me think about the presentation of Marta that was talking about a vicious circle where you have less fish in the sea, so you got to fish more in order to make the same profit. In the fish auction, also in France, I don't know how it is around Europe, but in France, you have a system of auction where the price is decreasing. So it tends to like facilitate the middleman, but definitely not give a fair price to the fisher. So you have all these causes that is going to make the fisher fish more, and then you have less fish in the sea. So you got to increase your effort to catch the same number. And basically, for me, CSF is basically reverse this vicious circle into a virtuous circle. Sounds really utopian like that, but in a way, as I said at the beginning, when you have the consumer buying fresh fish for a fair price, you allow the fisher to go less at sea, to use more sustainable techniques, and then you allow the environment to be preserved, which will make small-scale fishers survive on the long term, allow them to provide fish directly to the consumer, and so on. So yeah, thank you so much for inviting Pleine to the webinar, and thank you for the wonderful contribution that has been made. And sorry again for arriving a bit late. I was with a fisher just before, so I couldn't arrive before. Thank you so much.
No worries. Thank you very much, Thibault. We are very jealous to see that you are outside and in the coast. So yeah, we little by little we cover, I think, all the different aspects of this, the intention of this a community of practice that will be food connected. We have still some times for questions. I see Marie-Thérèse Safe has raised her hand. I think it's better, Marie-Thérèse, if you write your question because it will be easier and faster for the dynamic of the chat. In the meantime, I've seen another question from Mary Level that I will read aloud, and then I will ask the partners to answer. She says, the issues and solutions seem to be the same all over the world, but how do we overcome the cooperations or the global issues? So who wants to answer this question?
Well, I can say that at least our approach is always to focus on these global problems, but with a local answer. So, because what we are advocating for is to buy locally, also sustainably, but at a local level. This is what I would say, that the main thing is to try to act at a very local level, also cooperating or kind of cooperating at the global level, but in the end the actions are very local.
Yeah, I would agree with Jara, and if you let me also talk, I would say that linking what with Jara was saying actually is the intention of this project is also to be able to map a bit or at least to have an interactive map where the consumers could access to the initiatives that are in the ground. They are close to them, so they can access to them, and they can actually, you know, with the fork, as Alessandro was saying in the beginning, with their consumers' choices, to eat better and to have a more sustainable way to act in when they eat. So I would say that the idea is that with this project, people will be able to be visualize and do simple choices of towards a sustainable and fair food systems.
And Paula, if I can add
Sure.
quickly on this, I think also in the construction of the partnership, we have tried to, let's say, to organize the project in a way so that we have these global local connections, because we have on one side more global work or work that is more at the entire Mediterranean regional level or at the global level that is conducted by Global Footprint Network, for instance, and the on-the-ground work that is done by LIFE and GOB Menorca, as we have seen. One of the things that we are trying to do in the project is, I think, to provide a scientific background to all the activities that are done at the local scale, and to quantify in numbers how these will then impact globally, let's say, the overall footprint of people. Something that you may have seen in my presentation is the date of overshoot. So last year, Earth Overshoot Day was on August 22nd. This date is basically the day in the year in which we have consumed all the resources that are available for that year. What we are trying to see, what is in the plan, in the project, is to connect the local activities with this global information by showing to what extent the overshoot day could be delayed, so we could move the date if we were to actually implement the solutions that we will identify in the pilot areas at a wider level. So this is the way in which we will try to provide this connection between local activities and the repercussion that these should, we all hopefully have globally in terms of reducing the overall impact on the planet.
Thank you, Alessandro. I think there is we have still time for a couple of questions. There is one that I think is more related to what Hara and Marta are doing. They said, I'm aware that some research on short supply chains in the Mediterranean suggests that a fundamental limitation to these alternative networks is the reliance on rich consumers. I am wondering, did you come across affordability challenges on the consumer side in the areas you have worked in? I think it also applies for Thibault.
Well, in our case, there are indeed some products that tend to be more focused to like high net clients, or which are more expensive. But this could be, for example, wine or oil. This you can really see a different price for all this big scale production of oil and this small scale production of oil. But for the more basic goods, as could be either vegetables, even meat, we are still playing at a price that it's a bit higher than what you can find in supermarket, but it's not that much higher, which is it's more authentic, but it's not this super high gourmet price. So at least from our perspective in Custodia Agraria, we are always trying to find this balance, and the way to try not to increase too much the prices is by one, as I was saying, lowering production costs, and second, by distributing at a very local level. And then there's more room for gains for the farmer directly, and not too much for the intermediaries. I don't know if I am answering the question.
Yeah, I would agree with you. It happens a bit the same. In terms of on the fisheries, I would say, since I don't know if you've seen the very complex chart that on the fisheries value chains as they are now, you see that due to all this complex chain, the price it's increasing, and you go to the market and the fish is expensive. So when we want to shorten the value chain and make it more direct marketing, what we are doing is actually taking out a lot of all these costs in the middle. So what we are and so by paying we will gonna pay a fair price to the fisher, the producer. So we are gonna raise and give a more stable price for them, but that shouldn't mean that will be an overcost for the final consumer, because what actually will be, the price might be the same for them as before going to the market, but they will access directly the fisher. As I was saying before, normally the 10% of the fishing of the price goes to the small scale fisher. Now that is going to be improved, but that won't necessarily mean to increase of the final price to the consumer. That maybe Thibault can support me on that and say, yeah, in their case, if that's the case, or how they have done that.
I would just add that I see that on your background, Marta, there is the board of GOEN, if I'm not mistaken. And GOEN is the president of an organization that is the Ligneur de la Pointe de Bretagne, who is a member of LIFE. Exactly. He's a good friend of mine, and they did a wonderful campaign this year about forgotten species. I'm not going to be able to tell all the names in English, but there are a few species that cost really few, that are not well valorized in the usual market and value chain. And these kind of fishes don't cost so much. You can have them for 2, 3, 5 euros a kilo. And as you were explaining, the normal fisheries value chain, you have like maybe the industrial or semi-industrial boat going at sea. So it goes at the sea for like 1 or 2 weeks. So the first fish that was caught when it arrives at the harbor has like 1 week, 10 days. And then it stays a few days in the auction. It's transported by the middleman. So it's like 3 more days. Then it arrives to the fishmonger. And he feeds the comment on a Monday and you arrive on a Friday. Sometimes the fish has 2 weeks, sometimes more, which sometimes explains also the smell of some, like, you know, fish shops. And when you go on the harbor, what Marta was explaining, the price is going to be decreased tremendously compared to what you're going to have at the fishmonger. But the quality of the fish has nothing to compare with what you would find on an industrial value chain. So you have these species that are forgotten and that are not going to cost so much. And you also have the fact that the neoliberal fisheries value chain is so long and increases obviously the price so much while decreasing the quality. You have so much advantages in terms of low or middle income social categories to buy directly to the fisher.
Sorry, I jump in here because I want to link with what Thibaut was saying and stress one element of the project. As you may have noticed, we are trying to bring together different communities to some extent, because we are speaking of both small-scale farmers and small-scale fishers. Because I think the approach we want to take is a wider dietary approach. So when we speak about the cost of different diets, I think it's, I mean, if you assume just a simple substitution of, let's say, traditionally caught or caught through large-scale fisheries sea bass with an alternative from small-scale fisheries, you may have increased price. But I think the point is to educate the consumers and the producers as well about the need to change also the basket of products that we are consuming and diversify what we are, what people are consuming. So the issue that Thibaut was touching is fundamental, because we know that in the Mediterranean region there are a limited set of 6 to 8 species that are primarily targeted by the consumers. And the point is that we can go around these, diversify the basket, increase the consumption of uncommon low trophic level fishes, and do this while fishing these fish from small-scale fisheries. So I think it's really a different, like a dietary-wide approach that we are trying to promote, in which, to some extent, shifting, let's say, the way in which we consume may require or imply, in some cases, even decreasing the consumption of meat or decreasing the consumption of fish, but securing that the amount that is consumed is local, fair, sustainable, and so on. So this is the wider approach rather than the sector-specific approach that we are trying to adopt.
Thank you very much to all of you. I am so sorry, but I'm afraid that we are running out of time and we have to close the webinar for today. It was a great pleasure to hear all the partners and to have you also, Thibaut, here with us today. I also want to thank all the participation from the public and the engagement in the questions. We are, this is a launching event, so we are in the very beginning, but we will be glad to keep you updated with the different, all the evolution of this project, because we really think that this wider approach to a community of practice is worth it. So thank you very much. I wish you have a nice afternoon to everybody, and we are in touch.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
The future of our planet is decided at the table. in our daily food choices. What do we know about what we eat? How do we choose? Where do we buy it? You can make a difference and contribute to a future where everyone has access to food that is good. Eating must be a pleasure for everyone. We all have a right to food that is healthy, natural, fresh, and seasonal. Clean. Being aware helps us to choose food that is good for our health and the health of our planet. Fair. Knowing our food means making choices that are fair to us, to the producers, and to future generations. Slow Food has been working for over 30 years to defend biodiversity and fight the climate crisis by promoting good, clean, and fair food for all. Support slow food. Let's act together for the common good. Go to donate.slowfood.com/en and follow us at terramadreselunadelgusta.com.